What happens when one of Hollywood's most enigmatic stars sits down with one of daytime television's most outspoken hosts, and the conversation takes a turn that nobody saw coming? Today, we're diving into the explosive moment that had everyone talking, when Johnny Depp found himself in a heated exchange with Joy Behar that ended with him walking right off the set of The View. Make sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think really triggered this dramatic exit. The atmosphere in The View's studio was electric that morning. Johnny Depp, dressed in his signature dark jacket and layers of silver jewelry, sat comfortably in the guest chair, his familiar slight smile playing across his lips. The interview had started smoothly enough, with the usual pleasantries about his latest projects and his return to the spotlight. Whoopi Goldberg had been conducting most of the conversation, keeping things light and professional. "So Johnny," Whoopi began, "you've been through quite a journey these past few years. How does it feel to be back in the public eye on your own terms?" Depp leaned back slightly, his rings catching the studio lights as he gestured. "Well, Whoopi, it's been a process of rediscovering what authenticity means to me, as an artist and as a person. I've always believed that truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep people try to bury it." The other hosts nodded along, Sarah jumping in with a question about his upcoming film projects. The conversation flowed naturally, with Depp sharing anecdotes about his creative process and his love for character development. His voice carried that familiar, gravelly quality, punctuated by thoughtful pauses and the occasional chuckle. "I think what people don't realize," Depp continued, "is that every character I've ever played has been a piece of a puzzle. You know, they're all connected to this larger tapestry of storytelling that I'm trying to weave. Whether it's Captain, Jack or Edward Scissorhands or any of the others, they're all explorations of the human condition." Sunny Hostin leaned forward, clearly engaged. "That's fascinating, Johnny. You've always been known for taking on unconventional roles. What draws you to these complex characters?" "I suppose I'm drawn to the outsiders," Depp replied, his eyes taking on a more serious cast, the misfits, the ones who don't quite fit into society's neat little boxes. "There's something honest about characters who refuse to conform, who insist on being authentic even when the world pushes back against them." The conversation continued in this vein for several more minutes, with Depp discussing his approach to acting, his relationship with his fans, and his thoughts on the current state of Hollywood. He spoke about the importance of artistic integrity and the courage it takes to stand by your principles, even when it costs you professionally. "You know," he said, his voice growing more passionate, "I've learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do is refuse to play by rules that were designed to silence you. When you know who you are, really know it in your bones, then other people's opinions become just noise." Alyssa Farah Griffin nodded thoughtfully. "That's a powerful message, Johnny. It sounds like you're speaking from personal experience." "Aren't we all?" Depp replied with a wry smile. "Life has a way of testing your resolve, of seeing how committed you really are to your values. I've been tested, certainly, but I've also been reminded of the incredible support that exists out there. People who see through the noise and recognize truth when they hear it." The energy in the studio remained positive, with the host seeming genuinely interested in Depp's philosophical approach to his career and life. Even Joy Behar, who had been relatively quiet up to this point, appeared to be listening intently. The camera occasionally cut to her, showing her nodding along with some of Depp's comments. But as the interview progressed, there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Joy began to lean forward more, her expression becoming more focused, more calculating. Those who knew her well could recognize the signs. She was preparing to ask the question that had been burning in her mind since the interview began. "Johnny," she finally interjected, her voice cutting through the comfortable conversation like a blade. "I think what our viewers really want to know is how you can sit there and talk about truth and authenticity when you've been accused of some pretty serious things. How do you reconcile that?" The studio fell silent. The other hosts exchanged glances, clearly not expecting Joy to go there so directly. Depp's expression shifted, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. He took a slow breath, his fingers drumming once against his knee. "Joy," he said, his voice measured but with an edge that hadn't been there before. "I think if you're going to make accusations, you should be prepared to back them up with facts. What exactly are you referring to?" Joy didn't back down. "Oh, come on, Johnny, we all know what I'm talking about. The domestic violence allegations, the drug use, the erratic behavior, you can't just pretend none of that happened." "I'm not pretending anything happened or didn't happen," Depp replied, his voice growing harder. "But I am suggesting that maybe, just maybe, you should consider the possibility that not everything you read in the tabloids is gospel truth. Maybe there's more to the story than what fits into your convenient narrative." The tension in the studio was palpable now. The other hosts looked uncomfortable, unsure whether to jump in or let the exchange continue. Whoopi opened her mouth as if to redirect, but Joy was just getting started. "Convenient narrative." Joy's voice rose. "Johnny, these weren't just tabloid stories. These were serious allegations that went through the legal system. Are you saying that all of these women, all of these witnesses, all of these court documents, are just part of some grand conspiracy? Depp's eyes flashed, and for a moment, the charming movie star facade completely dropped away. What I'm saying, Joy, is that maybe you should do your homework before you start throwing around accusations. On national television, maybe you should consider that there might be two sides to every story. And maybe, just maybe, the truth isn't always what generates the most clicks or the most outrage. The studio audience had gone completely silent. This was no longer a friendly celebrity interview. This was a confrontation, and everyone could feel it. Chat controls sonnet for chat controls. Joy leaned back in her chair, but her posture remained aggressive. Johnny, I'm not throwing around accusations. I'm asking legitimate questions that I think our viewers deserve answers to. You're a public figure. You've put yourself out there, and when serious allegations are made, people have a right to know where you stand, where I stand. Depp's voice was dangerously quiet now. I stand exactly where I've always stood, Joy. I stand with the truth. But apparently, that's not good enough for you. You want me to confess to things I didn't do just to satisfy your need for a dramatic television moment. Whoopi finally stepped in, her voice diplomatic but firm. Okay, let's all take a breath here. Johnny, Joy, I think we can have this conversation without it getting heated. But Joy wasn't finished. Heated. Whoopi, I'm just asking the questions that everyone's thinking. This isn't about drama, this is about accountability. Johnny, you can't just charm your way out of serious allegations with movie star charisma. Depp's laugh was bitter. Charm my way out. Is that what you think this is? You think I'm sitting here trying to charm anyone? Joy, I came here to talk about my work, my art, my passion for storytelling. Instead, you want to relitigate a legal battle that's already been fought and won. Joy's eyebrows shot up. You call what happened winning. Your reputation was destroyed. You lost major roles. You were basically blacklisted from Hollywood. That's winning to you. What I call winning, Depp said, his voice rising for the first time, is standing up for myself when the entire world decided I was guilty before I even had a chance to defend myself. What I call winning is refusing to be bullied into admitting to things I didn't do just to make other people comfortable. Sarah N. tried to interject. Johnny, I think what Joy is trying to understand is no. Depp cut her off, his attention laser-focused on Joy. I know exactly what Joy is trying to do. She's trying to get me to break, to lose my temper, to give her the soundbite she can use to prove whatever point she's trying to make. Well, congratulations, Joy, you're getting close. Joy's voice took on a mocking tone. Oh, so now, I'm the villain. I'm the one who's out of line for asking tough questions. Johnny, you're a grown man. If you can't handle being asked about your past, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. Handle it. Depp's voice was incredulous. Joy, I've been handling it for years. I've been handling the lies, the manipulation, the character assassination. I've been handling having my children read horrible things about their father in the press. I've been handling watching my life's work be dismissed because of a narrative that was constructed to destroy me. The other host sat in stunned silence. This was unlike anything they'd ever seen on The View. The usual controlled chaos of the show had given way to something raw and unpredictable. Constructed narrative. Joy pressed on. Johnny, are you seriously suggesting that multiple women, multiple witnesses, multiple court cases were all part of some elaborate scheme against you? That level of paranoia is concerning. Depp stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Paranoia? You want to talk about paranoia? How about the paranoia of assuming that every accusation is true, that every allegation is fact, that every person who comes forward with a story must be believed without question? How about the paranoia of assuming that men are always the villains, and women are always the victims? Sit down, Johnny, Joy said, her voice sharp. You're proving my point right now. This is exactly the kind of behavior that got you in trouble in the first place. What behavior? Depp demanded, still standing. Standing up for myself, defending my reputation, refusing to be bullied by someone who's already made up her mind about me before I even walked in here. Sonny Hostin finally spoke up. Johnny, I think we all understand that this has been a difficult time for you, but Joy is just doing her job. She's asking the hard questions. Hard questions. Depp turned to face Sonny. No, Sonny, hard questions would be asking about the evidence. That was ignored. The witnesses that were discredited, the recordings that were taken out of context. Hard questions would be asking why the media rushed to judgment without waiting for all the facts to come out. Joy wasn't backing down. The facts did come out. Johnny. In multiple court cases, in multiple jurisdictions, the facts painted a picture of a man who was out of control, who was abusive, who was dangerous. Those are the facts. Those are your facts. Depp shot back. Those are the facts that fit your narrative, that support your worldview, that make you feel righteous about destroying someone's life. But they're not the whole truth, and deep down you know it. I know it. Joy's voice was getting louder. What I know is that you're standing there gaslighting our audience, trying to make us feel sorry for you when you should be taking responsibility for your actions. Gaslighting. Depp's voice was dangerous now. You want to talk about how about gaslighting an entire generation of men into believing that they're guilty until proven innocent? How about gaslighting society into believing that accusation equals conviction? Alyssa tried to jump in. I think we're getting a little off track here. Maybe we should know, Depp interrupted, his eyes never leaving Joy's face. We're not off track at all. This is exactly where this conversation was always going to go. From the moment I walked in here, Joy had already decided what this interview was going to be about. She didn't want to hear about my work, my art, my passion. She wanted to put me on trial. Again, put you on trial. Joy laughed, but there was no humor in it. Johnny, you put yourself on trial the moment you decided to sue. You opened that door. You made it public. You invited scrutiny. Don't act like you're some innocent victim here. Innocent victim. Depp's voice was barely controlled now. Joy, I am the victim here. I'm the victim of a smear campaign, a character assassination, a deliberate attempt to destroy my career and my reputation. But apparently, that doesn't fit your narrative either. The studio was electric with tension. The camera operators were getting shots they'd never expected. The producers were frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial, and the live audience was watching a real-time meltdown unfold before their eyes. Your reputation. Joy pressed on relentlessly. Johnny, your reputation was built on playing characters, on pretending to be someone you're not. Maybe the problem is that people finally saw who you really are. That was the moment when something in Johnny Depp's face changed completely. The mask of civility, the attempt at reasonable discourse, the effort to maintain some semblance of professionalism, all of it vanished in an instant. Chat controls sonnet for sonnet 4. Who I really am. Depp's voice dropped to a whisper, but it carried more menace than any shout could have. Joy, you have absolutely no idea who I really am. You've built this entire crusade on tabloid headlines and social media outrage. You've never met me before today. You've never had a real conversation with me. And yet you sit there with such certainty, such moral superiority, telling me and everyone watching who I am. Joy's eyes narrowed. I know enough, Johnny. I know what the courts found. I know what the evidence showed. I know what multiple witnesses testified to. That's enough for me. Depp took a step closer to the table, his voice gaining intensity. Because what you don't know, what you've never bothered to learn, is that I've spent my entire career giving everything I have to my craft. I've poured my soul into every character. I've worked with hundreds of people. I've been a father, a friend, a colleague. But none of that matters to you, does it? All that matters is this narrative you've constructed. Narrative? Joy stood up now too, facing him across the table. Johnny, the narrative isn't something I constructed. The narrative is something you created with your own actions, with your own choices, with your own behavior. My behavior. Depp's laugh was harsh and bitter. You want to talk about behavior? Let's talk about the behavior of the media that convicted me in the court of public opinion before I ever had a chance to defend myself. Let's talk about the behavior of people like you who take complex, nuanced situations and reduce them to black and white sound bites. Whoopi was desperately trying to regain control. Johnny, Joy, please, let's all just take a step back here. This doesn't have to know. Whoopi, Depp said, his voice cutting through her attempt at mediation. This absolutely has to happen. Because this is what it looks like when someone refuses to be bullied into submission. This is what it looks like when someone stands up to the mob mentality that's destroying people's lives. Joy's voice was shaking with anger now. Mob mentality. Johnny, you're talking about victims who had the courage to come forward, who risked everything to tell their truth. You're talking about a justice system that heard evidence and made decisions. That's not mob mentality, that's accountability. Accountability. Depp's voice rose to match hers. Joy, where's the accountability for the lies that were told? Where's the accountability for the evidence that was ignored? Where's the accountability for the witnesses who were threatened and intimidated? Where's the accountability for the media circus that destroyed my children's peace of mind? Your children. Joy's voice took on a cutting edge. Johnny, maybe you should have thought about your children before you made the choices that led us here. Maybe you should have considered them before you engaged in the behavior that brought all this attention. The moment those words left Joy's mouth, the atmosphere in the studio changed completely. It was as if she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Depp's face went completely still, his eyes focusing on her with an intensity that made several people in the studio visibly uncomfortable. My children, he said, his voice deadly quiet, are off limits. They have always been off limits. They didn't ask for any of this, they didn't deserve any of this, and they certainly don't deserve to have their father's reputation destroyed by someone who's more interested in ratings than truth. I'm interested in truth, Joy shot back. And the truth is that actions have consequences. The truth is that when you're a public figure, your choices affect more than just you. The truth is that the truth, Depp interrupted. his voice building to a crescendo, is that you've already made up your mind about me. The truth is that nothing I say here today will change your opinion because you're not interested in my side of the story. The truth is that you brought me here to humiliate me, to break me down, to get your viral moment. That's not true, Joy protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Depp's eyes blazed. Then tell me, Joy, what would it take for you to believe that maybe, just maybe, you're wrong about me? What evidence would you need to see? What testimony would you need to hear? What proof would satisfy you that I'm not the monster you've decided I am? Joy hesitated, and in that moment of hesitation, Depp found his answer. That's what I thought, he said, his voice filled with disgust. There's nothing, is there? No amount of evidence, no testimony, no proof, would ever be enough for you because you've already decided who I am. You've already written the story, and facts are just inconveniences that get in the way of your narrative. Johnny, that's not fair. Sonny tried to interject, but Depp wasn't listening to anyone except Joy. Now, fair, he laughed bitterly. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that my career was destroyed before I ever had a chance to tell my side? Is it fair that my children have to live with the stigma of having a father who's been branded a monster? Is it fair that I've been blacklisted, canceled, erased from projects I'd worked on for years? You weren't canceled, Joy said, her voice defensive now. You faced consequences for your actions. Consequences for allegations, Depp corrected. Consequences for accusations. Consequences for a narrative that was crafted to destroy me. But you know what, Joy? I'm still here, I'm still standing, I'm still fighting. And that clearly bothers you more than anything else. What bothers me, Joy said, her voice rising again, is that you refuse to take responsibility. What bothers me is that you're standing there playing the victim when real victims are watching. Real victims, Depp's voice was incredulous. Joy, I am a real victim. I'm a victim of character assassination, of media manipulation, of a justice system that presumes guilt rather than innocence. But apparently, that doesn't count because I'm a man. Because I'm successful, because I don't fit your definition of what a victim looks like. The studio was in complete chaos now. The other hosts were trying to speak. The audience was murmuring, and the producers were frantically signaling from the control room. But Joy and Johnny were locked in their battle of wills, neither willing to back down. You know what? Depp said suddenly, his voice becoming calm again in a way that was more unsettling than his anger had been. I came here thinking I could have a civilized conversation. I came here thinking that maybe, just maybe, I could share my perspective and be heard. But you've made it clear that you're not interested in hearing anything that doesn't confirm what you already believe. Johnny, if you would just know, he cut Joy off one final time. I'm done. I'm done being lectured by someone who's already made up her mind. I'm done being treated like a criminal for defending myself. I'm done pretending that this is a conversation when it's really just an execution. With that, Johnny Depp turned away from the table and began walking toward exit. The studio erupted in confusion, with producers rushing forward and the other hosts calling after him. Johnny, wait, Whoopi called out. Don't leave like this. But Depp didn't stop. He didn't turn around. He walked straight to the studio door, his posture rigid with barely contained fury. Just before he reached the exit, he paused and looked back over his shoulder at Joy, who was still standing behind the table, her face a mixture of defiance and uncertainty. You know what the real tragedy is, Joy, he said, his voice carrying across the silent studio. The real tragedy is that you had a chance to have a real conversation with a real human being, and instead you chose to have a fight with a caricature you created in your own mind. That says more about you than it ever will about me. And with that, Johnny Depp walked out of the View studio, leaving behind a stunned audience, a bewildered panel of hosts, and a moment that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. The camera lingered on the empty chair where he had been sitting, then slowly panned to Joy's face, which had gone from defiant to something approaching uncertainty. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity before Whoopi finally spoke. Well, she said, her voice barely audible. We'll be right back. But everyone knew that things would never be quite the same again. That's the story of the day Johnny Depp walked off The View after a heated exchange with Joy Behar. What do you think really pushed him over the edge? Was it Joy's relentless questioning, or was there something deeper at play? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more stories that go beyond the headlines. Chat controls. Sonnet for chat controls. Sonnet 4.